It's easy to assume that with the internet and the sort of a kind of globalization of access to information that young people are in a better position than, say, I would have been when I was at school. But I don't think that's the case. I think the fundamental challenges and questions that kids have about sexuality have remained the same, and I feel that the confusion and potentially even risk surrounding them is as great as it was then, and potentially even greater.
Having a resource that was designed by Cosmopolitan was really useful for us because it enabled us to deliver much better quality lessons, because to make a resource that good for schools is often just not possible, and so having something that really supported teachers was vital.
Oh, it made it tremendously easier because there's a proliferation of potential topics that you can cover, and having them in a booklet form, it made it easy to be able to focus entirely on what you were doing to manage the discussion rather than to be constantly generating spontaneous examples.
There's a lot of misconceptions that were cleared up during the talks, and especially with our teachers, we covered like a big section with the hour that we had.
And so the Cosmopolitan booklets had a great mixture of lots of content that meant that the discussion was much more rich and fruitful. And that was, I think, the crucial balance between the questions, the discussion, and actual information, which can so often be missing.
The first thing they see on the booklet will be colourful images, and that will grab their eyes. The booklet, everything grabs your attention. And this booklet, everything needs to grab your attention because it's such an important subject.
But I think it's important to teach consent to both genders, because a lot of people who haven't learnt about sex ed or about consent, they don't know that it could happen to both genders, and it doesn't just necessarily have to be the girl. It can also be the boy who needs to give consent.
I was really, really pleased with, when I went into the lessons, how the quality of the instruction from the teachers and how it was enabled by the booklets, and also the amazing comments and questions that were coming from the students.
They like to engage in material which they know hasn't been totally curated by their teacher. And so I think it allowed me to engage with them on more of an even playing field.
Previously, I didn't know that kissing needed consent, but after the course I learned that I did.
This sounds stupid, but I didn't know that when you're on the pill, you can only not get pregnant, but you can still catch STIs.
Nowadays, we don't really talk about PSHE as much in schools. I think it's more important to get it out there, because some people may feel shy about this certain topic.
It makes the blurred lines of consent to some people who aren't educated in that kind of area more clear, and it saves them from getting into that kind of trouble.
I look a lot for different resources online, and there's a lot that just lacks any real content, or if it does, is just very, very minimal.
We have booklets for school, and they're not really interesting, they're just bland, and I don't really like looking at them, and I don't pay attention as much. But when they were colourful and we first saw them, we was excited to learn about the subject.
Having the kind of Cosmo Men's Health brand, I think must be part of the success, because firstly, these are kids who I was teaching 15, 16, and so they are beginning to become that target audience, and they'll also be beginning to think about, consuming magazines like Cosmo and Men's Health. They're becoming adults, and so I think that made it very clear to them that they were adults as opposed to something that had a squirrel on the front of it.
I would 100% recommend that this programme would be taught in other schools, because it's as much as other lessons are important, this is a very, very important life lesson, because you're going to go out into the world and you're going to have to use it and have to interact with other people.
In order to support them, they need really good resources, and that is what the Cosmopolitan booklets gave us.